So thank you for joining me today, and I'm really excited to talk to you about what we're doing at Autodesk and in terms of trying to change and redefine the entire closeout process for our industry. So as I was said before, I do come from industry. I created and ran a BIM department for a decade at Saunders Construction. One of the key initiatives there was getting the information out to the owners to the point where we're delivering facility management models to some of our customers that were requesting it. So I have a lot of experience in kind of the federation and data aggregation that needs to happen, and I'll be more than happy to address any of those questions as well. So we're going to start out talking about kind of the Autodesk vision and how we see and how we're going to move forward with the construction industry as a whole. And our goal is to help the teams meet the world's rapidly expanding building infrastructure needs, again, safe and sustainably. And overall, what we're looking at is we're developing and have developed a platform that can engage our customers from the very beginning in design and even capital planning, all the way to owner operations with facility management. In doing so, we have a broad aspects of different functionalities across the board, including coordination, quantification, and so forth. The important thing to think about here, especially when it comes to this handover process, is that when we're looking at redefining what that process looks like, it has to start from the beginning. It has to start with the design. All the players need to be involved so we can really get a grasp of what is the deliverable that's needed at the end, starting with the end in mind, similar to lean pull planning processes. We really want to engage that from early on. Now, when it's starting design, the ideal span of the aggregation of this data goes from design into pre-construction, construction, all the way out to operations, right? So how can we make sure this information flows evenly and easily as possible? That becomes really critical in the success of any deliverable for that end-to-end handover methodology. When we're talking about the traditional processes, there's many different aspects here that I'll let you kind of look over yourself. But the important thing to understand is that all the data becomes different silos at a certain point, and we have to make sure we can integrate all the data in a timely, manageable fashion. As a contractor, it was really hard to start inputting that information during the construction process because just the man hours involved with it, getting the right data from the subcontractors, really understanding what's going on and getting that as an easiest process as possible becomes really critical. And for us to really do this, we got to break this traditional handover process. We got to look at it differently. So as we're redefining that management process, we want to look at kind of three core pillars of how we can progress this industry and how we need to increase this platform. So first is that we have the data ownership and on-demand collaboration. This is happening live. Anytime that you have to wait for the end to the input data, you're wasting time, you're wasting a lot of energy, and you're actually losing information. You sometimes, quite literally, you can lose the pieces of paper, coffee gets spilled on them, whatever the case may be, data can just go away. We got to standardize these workflows for the connected silos, and we also have to start tracking assets, not just in terms of what's going on during construction, but how it will be used down the line. So the first piece is that data ownership and that on-demand collaboration. Now, if we look at traditional software today, it is really around the different silos of the architect doing their work, the subcontractors doing their work, the general contractor managing the process and pulling the information in just for the construction utilization. This is very different than pulling in the information for facility management uses. So we really got to make that connective tissue happen even more effectively. Now, some traditional stakeholder pains that we're looking at is the ownership of the site where all the information is being aggregated, and also due to privacy concerns, what is the sensitivity of the information and how people can use it, view it, and access it. That's always been a concern in the industry. Certain people shouldn't see certain amount of information until it's beneficial and so forth. So when we're looking at this, what is that data federation? So understanding that we got to pull all the data, and this is not only data, but also drawings, information. So information is the communication of that data to different people. That becomes really important. So how we take this data, make it information that the entire team can utilize, and also keep those steps along the way. So conceptually, this is what we're looking at. So we have essentially different silos, and how we're going to connect those silos, whether it's models, whether it's drawings, whether it's just other pieces of data, and how do we make that communication go bidirectionally? Because as changes are being made, and it's often going to be the case, not everyone's always aware of those changes as they occur. So how does that communication get increased, and how do we manage that in a smooth fashion? This is the way we're going to change that handover process. If we're able to do this easily and proactively, then moving towards that new information, that new goal, what the future is, that digital twin, that is what's going to help us get there more efficiently and faster. So why is this important? So first of all, when we have the different connective pieces communicating back and forth, the data can go from one section to the other really easy, very portable. The data ownership and privacy still resides with the people involved. So as it changes, when that information needs to be shared, it can be shared with who wants it and when they want it. And then standardizing the workflow helps us easily and creatively be able to capture that data and push it forward. So data federation allows all this to happen, and that connective tissue with data federation makes that next step even greater. So some of the outcomes you can look at with proper data federation. Documents are always up to date in sync. I mentioned earlier about, you have a stack of paper on your desk that can literally be versions old. It can be the wrong equipment. You're going to make sure all the data is in the right place and up to date and current. When we talk about data federation, it just goes beyond the typical, my owner needs the spec for the VAV box. Well, who installed it? When did they install it? What's the review cycle? What's the maintenance schedule? All those pieces become even more great information that can be federated and communicated throughout the process. And again, its integrity of the data is crucial holistically from design all the way to handover and turnover. And that's the biggest piece. A lot of times contractors will want to just pick up in the middle when they're doing their work, and it just makes it more difficult to manage that process. So the second core piece to what we're looking at here is the standardization of workflows. Now, if everyone on the team is inputting the data in a proper process, it just streamlines it, and you know that the data is integral to what you're seeing, but also timely placed. So that breaks down the standardization between the components that are being involved and also the templates that are being shared. So what is a project template? So basically, that is a standard default format that allows you to engage in the proper workflows and standardization right off the bat. So the greater your templates, the easier it is for any end user to input that data. Now, when a data template is created, we are sharing that template from not only the origin point, which is the overall hospital template, but then it can go created and copied out to any job that you have going to ensure that the same processes are being executed on every job that you have, making it much easier for you to understand the data. It was really frustrating for some of our owners at Saunders when we would create and give them a template for that execution for that facility management job that we gave them. And then they would go with another contractor and have the same information. However, it was really disjointed, very, very segregated, and made it harder for them to manage that information. So working on templates helps relieves that tremendously. This is important because you're able to then capture that data across many, many projects. And then you can derive insights from those. What are the same things that are happening based on this template? Then you can start learning before you build the next job. We ran into this problem with this kind of equipment before. Let's spec something else. It gives you that insight. That way you can just move forward and increase efficiency for the entire life cycle of your project. Now, components. Now, components are the bits and pieces that help offer the information to you. So whether that's a checklist, a spec section, a drawing, these are all different examples of what could be a component. If you're utilizing model geometry, each individual element inside the model then becomes also a component, and then how we can input the information in that component. Now, the list of components is vast. It could be drawings, checklists, again, insight. No matter what information you're getting, being able to manage that in a content library becomes really, really critical. That way, as you move forward to those new jobs, the aggregation of the information is one step ahead. So for example, if you have a particular train or a brand of VAV box that you want to spec on all your projects, you can input the manufacturer information into the component already. And when it's populated into the projects, some of the data is already there. And speeding up that process, making it really, really easy to engage what you need. So some of the outcomes associated with just the overall kind of content and content library, as well as standardization of workflows. It allows you to kind of standardize that across many, many jobs. It allows you for effective use on jobs as they roll out even better. The ability to create a template from a component, for example, an RFI or submittal, and also being able to update that project template as your projects evolve. As you choose to go with different equipment or choose different workflow processes, you update the template, and then the next jobs automatically have that. That standardization makes it so much easier to, again, aggregate that data to that federated data silo. So, and the fourth piece is actually assets. What are you really tracking? What is the information that you need to produce moving forward? Now, asset management is a really, really big thing. And there's lots of discussions that I've had with owners and facility management groups about the need for proper asset management. The first thing that I need you to think of when you're managing assets is, again, like we said earlier, starting with the end in mind. With that end associated with it, you need to find out what data and what parameters are needed for the facility management team to run that project effectively. Now, we ran into this on one of our projects for one of our owners, to where the ownership team wanted us to deliver over 50 different parameters and information fields associated with all the different pieces of equipment. But when we spoke with the facility management team on the things they needed to run the project, they only needed 6 of them. So having a conversation between both groups, we were able to meet in the middle to really understand what needed to happen to manage those assets. Now, the asset lifecycle is pretty unique, because when that asset is initially designed from your engineers, architects, or whoever it may be, there's a certain amount of specs associated with the analysis of the project, whether it's heating and cooling, whether it's structural, whatever the case may be. Now, once that analysis information and that data is secured through pre-construction in terms of, okay, this is what we're going to purchase and this is how we're going to move forward, that's when we start understanding what is the data that is needed for that commissioning workflow. How does that get tagged out into the field? And during installation, how is some of those elements automatically input to that process? Because again, you don't want to do it at the very end. You want to do it as it's going. It's far much more efficient at that point. And then as it goes through the workflow, and it goes from the commissioning documents and reports and the project closeout, attaching key documentation, any report, any handbooks, or even videos, or training materials, whatever it may be, being able to attach that to the asset itself and push it out to the field. Now, this gives that element to the facility management team, how they're going to track and maintain that equipment. It's far easier to be able to digitally pull it up on your phone or an iPad or your laptop, select the item and have the information embedded into it, or walk up to the 8th floor, forget what you needed to know in terms of the specification, go back down to the office in the basement where it has all the drawings, all the specs are in there, figure it out there, and then go back up. If there's some way we can digitally communicate this, it helps up that process much easier. So, and this is attaching all the relevant information associated with it and understanding the installation process, seeing that was there issues during installation? Was there a problem? Was it damaged? All those things being readily available in the information itself becomes that much more valuable as you move forward. So that's the traditional handover process, right? We're getting the data from design, we're inputting it in, whether it's in a software solution or if it's within an AutoCAD file or Navisworks or Revit, whatever the case may be. How do we get the data out to the field as efficiently as possible? So now when we talk about redefining handover, we want this process not to be a point in time activity, but leverage that and leverage the tools we talked about so it's a live process. And this is critical because the more it is a live, living process, the more everyone's more accountable to sustaining this process. What ends up happening on many, many job sites is that the project engineer or they'll bring someone in from the office, sits at a desk and just pounds the keyboard with the information to input that data so the handover documents are clear. That's a waste of time. It should be done by the entire team, not just one person at the end, to make sure it's done on time, on budget. And when you hand over the keys and the contractor gets his last check, it's done on time. Now we're connecting these workflows. We have the different silos. Now we're going to be sharing this interactively. When we start sharing it interactively, these are some of the outcomes you're getting. Items are identified and tracked from the beginning. So I can't reiterate this enough. Having the information inside your asset isn't enough at the end. What you need to have is have the process and workflows associated with it so you get the full story. Information is by far one of the biggest currencies right now. The more ownership you have of the information involved from end to end, the more valuable your project will be and how you're going to be able to use it for your renters, or if you're going to sell it off, that data becomes more and more valuable. And as an owner, you have the access of this data along the way. So you have transparency, you can see into the process, you can see what's going on, and you can make a determination. Is this the right solution for my project? On the fly, not needing to have 1,000 questions answered across 1,000 hours. This allows for more scalability. What's nice about this is that with this redefined process, you can start with just drawings and markups. You can go out to adding RFI information into your assets, aggregating all that data. And at the end, if you want to start throwing your OMM manuals, training videos, whatever you want, you can choose what level you want to be at. One thing, you hear the term BIM all the time. The truth is, the most important letter in BIM is the I, it's the information. And if you're not using and sharing information, you're not doing BIM, you're just doing cool 3D modeling. And on top of that, the importance of that information is that it's not an on-off switch. If a contractor tells you, yeah, we'll give you a facility management model at the end, it's not that easy. There's more of a scale, I call it a 100% scale, from that delivery of just coordination at 25% or an actual integrated interactive FM model at the end, which is 100%. So it varies in between, and you really have to understand that you have to be dedicated from the beginning so you get the scalability and the benefits as it moves forward. So we talked about the importance of that team collaboration, which is crucial for the success here. We looked at the connected workflows and engaging the different people in different parts live and in the process. Now, another important aspect of this is predictable outcomes. If you're using the same pieces of equipment that keep on failing over and over again, if you don't know it holistically, you'll just keep on replacing that part. In the next job, that part will be spec'd again, and you'll end up replacing it again there too. This way, you can understand, okay, these things do work for me, they don't work for me, and you can push forward clearly and concisely. But this is where we are today. Autodesk can do this today. Many other companies can do similar things like this today, and we are engaged and we want to move the industry forward, not just redefining what we can do today, but what can we redefine later? And that's where the digital twin comes in. Now, you heard Tom mention at the beginning, digital twin is the idea of we have a model that exists throughout the project lifecycle, from the design team all the way to handover. And that is a twin of all the models and design elements that have occurred throughout that process. Now, the digital twin is a fantastic idea, and Autodesk has announced that we have a solution for this called Autodesk Tandem. Now, what we're doing is that we can take this digital twin now and start doing not just the informing portion of your as-built models, but now we can start simulating data. So when you're changing your mechanical systems and you're seeing how it affects the heating and cooling, we can do that. We can do a predictive analytics on it. When are things going to come up for review? When are things going to come up for maintenance? Can we predict that moving forward so we have that date refined? Now, all of this becomes really, really important within that singular space. So it's no longer drawings over there, models over there, sheets over there. It's all in one format. Now, as we're looking at transforming the lifecycle process with digital twin, I need you to take a look at this circle here. It's kind of the process of the project lifecycle. Notice one thing. The traditional elements of asset management start from the planning phase into design and building it. That is a small portion of that building's life. If you have a substantial process that you're going through capital planning, you end up a couple years in planning, a year or two in design, and a 2-year construction cycle, that's 6 years. But that building, it should be there for 50 years. So again, it's a very small portion of that. And how do we leverage the things about this process more cohesively? It starts at procurement, it ends in handover typically, but it doesn't end there. What about space planning? As your renters start changing and reorganizing the spaces, how quickly and easily can you respond with the right data, the right models, the right information to make sure that happens? When you start looking at predictive maintenance, performance tuning to make sure the system's up and running, all these pieces of information need to exist so we can accomplish much more refined abilities later, including portfolio planning and portfolio management on the current jobs that went through the system. So you can see actually what does it cost you to maintain these on a yearly basis as opposed to estimating. Now, when we're talking about the maturity of that digital twin, it is really a stair step of technology and value. So the more information you can put in, the more you'll get out of it. So when we look at it, starts with descriptive. What is the element? Then it's informative. What does it need? Then it's predictive. What can I do for it? At that point, you start doing comprehensive analysis, and then the system itself can start being autonomous. And this is how the industry is going to evolve. The Internet of Things is something that's really kind of popular now, and how you can connect things through the cloud. The more and more we expertly create these tools, then we can have more autonomy at the end. It's really important to understand that this is a gradual process. It's also scalable. So if you don't want to go all in at the end, you can start and get those benefits early and expand how you need to. Now, when we're looking at the industry challenges associated with this, the owner may ask for BIM, or you may ask for BIM, not really understanding how is BIM going to help my project at the end. There are great BIM processes to encourage proper design, proper construction, and all that. But there are greater things associated with leveraging that information that can help you operate the building better. And how do we make that a connective tissue? Going from just asking for BIM to really getting the information actively how you need it in your hand is where the industry is going. And this is where Autodesk is driving towards. Now, typically, you'll get that big stack of papers, rolls of drawings, you'll throw them in some closet on some floor, and your facility management guy will have to manage this over and over again. that's no longer needed. With Tandem, you'll be able to have all the information readily available, plus the things we talked about with analytics and predictive learning, and not just sharing the information, but utilizing it to push forward. So as we look at solving these challenges, sure, we can deliver BIM's promise on that data-centric workflow, but how does that actually get the benefit to you as owners for that building that's going to be there for 50 years? Well, the new Autodesk platform is Tandem, and here's a picture of it here. What we're doing is that we're normalizing the project data across all avenues of Autodesk pieces. So leveraging the Revit model that's being created by your designers or AutoCAD files, Type 3D, whatever they're using, that's an Autodesk product. We can then take that information, leverage it with the data that's being gathered in construction, and pull them together, start giving you not just a visual that's associated with this, but also, more importantly, the infinite amount of information that you can have at your fingertips. Now, as you take a look at this, what's going to be in this digital twin? It is the external data. We can add geospatial data, make sure, longitude, latitudes, all the different pieces, building and infrastructure systems, the processes, the Internet of Things, IoT, and data associated with it, and then also including your business systems and data, cost workflow analysis, things like that. Having a digital hub allows for that integration for these things to exist. And that's what Tandem is, the digital hub. Now, instead of having a place to where all these different pieces are located in different places, we have one place that communicates to those other areas, but houses that data in one container. And that's going to help you for the life of the job. And as it evolves, that model is also evolving. For example, you have a tenant finish on one of your floors, right? And they're going to reroute some of the ductwork so it works better for them. So that's not going to be in the new building drawings. What's going to be in the new building drawings is just the new work, and the old building drawings are the old work. So how do we manage the data between the two when there's another retail space coming in? How can we smooth that process out? Having all that information in one place, showing the before, showing the after, helps mitigate that time for any losses in efficiency and any other effect that it may have on additional renters and retailers. Now, this is extending the value of building information modeling. Now, as an owner, you can dictate exactly what you're looking for, whether that is a Tandem file, what specific information do you need for your facility management tool to be successful? What standards are you going to create? Having all this information readily available at your fingertips, then when you bring on your architect, when you bring on your engineers, when the contractor comes in, his subcontractors are on board, they are adding value directly to that digital twin container, allowing for it to grow and live as the project develops from beginning to end, the full life cycle. So obviously at the beginning, the information won't be as rich because you're still kind of specifying things. The drawings are being created, all those aspects are occurring. But then as it evolves downstream, that data just grows. And so when it's over, you have all the information you need. You have the building codes associated with it. You have the drawings, you have the specification data, everything will be right there in one place. And this is available and real today. So if you want to learn more about Tandem, feel free to reach out to your local Autodesk rep and we can show you what this tool can do. It is out there. I don't know if any of you went to our major conference, Autodesk University. It's every November. It's our biggest conference of the year, but we made the announcement there. And we've had some great feedback all the way through from owners, contractors, and designers. So enabling this new life cycle, this new way of working, we're looking at, starting from design. We talked about capturing and classifying those objects early. Is it Kobe? Is it other standards? Whatever you want to specify, doing that early, building it, having all that data specified throughout construction, commissioning that digital twin, and then handing it over to operations, and being able to then connect operational and performance data, define systems, enable simulations. So if you're going to choose to upgrade your system, put in the new specifications, see what it does to your building before you actually purchase anything. Again, be mindful of the information, have the information help you, and you'll be able to integrate much more efficiently and smoothly. Now, into an existing building. This has always been a question that's come up over and over again. So I have an existing building. How do I improve that commissioning process with it, the handover process with the changes, and creation of a digital twin? Scanning technology has been spectacular, and it is evolving more and more every single day, even to the point to where there's now a LiDAR scanner in your iPhones. It's incredible what it's being done to make sure this technology is moving forward. So now we have scanning and as-builting of an existing building that can happen much faster, much more efficiently than it ever could before. Converting those scans into actual geometries is easier than ever, and then pushing that out as your new digital twin. Now, as you reiterate and make new changes, as you remodel different areas of your building, add different systems to your building, it's now all in one place. So we can still make that happen within our Tandem platform. So you can accomplish the same things over and over again. Now, achieving better outcomes. This is what we are here for. How do we get better? This is that digital handover we looked at already. We have all these parts and pieces that are associated with the actual life of a project, not just the construction management piece of it. It goes far beyond construction management. It goes to the actual whole life of the building. Now, as we take a look at those pieces, we want that digital handover to be accelerated. Now, honestly speaking, when we delivered our facility management models to our customers, it was after handover. We did it as a +1. We didn't charge our owner for it because we wanted to learn as a BIM team how to do this, how can we make it more efficient. So we just gave it to some of our owners. Now, how do you transfer that becomes really important. The easiest thing, the contractor wants to get his last check. So he's going to give you contractually what is required, and that's those drawings and those specs, and they'll put them together, slip sheeted everything, and here you go, give me my check. But again, that information becomes more important to you as an owner than it does to the contractor as a whole. So as you're looking at that transparency, becomes critically important to make sure that everyone's on the same page doing the process. If you're asking for 15 things to be filled in on every single piece of equipment that is being installed, we got to make sure that's happening. That way at handover, we're not waiting weeks to make sure those fields are done. It's being done live and in real time. Now, many contractors may say that this is going to extend the construction life cycle. It's going to make things worse. It doesn't. There's been many studies out there. If you input the data as it's being installed, it is not any longer at the end. So being able to have that information becomes really critical. And now you're transforming the use of your assets. Those assets that the contractor gives you that are primed and perfect, ready to go, now are key tools for the success of you managing your buildings. So how do we kind of take those transformative activities and solutions and utilize that asset information and push this right back to where you need it to be? Understanding your portfolio, getting the right dollars for your projects, and moving forward, getting the right rent for your tenants, just to make sure it's all going. It starts with the handover and commissioning process, but it also includes that planning utilization that we talked about. One of the owners that we delivered our facility management tool to was really keen on having the team being able to do space planning live in the model to understand how the different offices were going to change and move before they actually started moving desks. So they did space planning with it. They were to analyze based on sun angles, if it's a better layout or if it's not a better layout. Doing predictive maintenance and analytics on the equipment itself. You have your warranties. Lots of times, many times, as projects are being ran, the easier solution when a part fails is to buy a new part because you need it fixed immediately. However, lots of times in these scenarios, the purchase of that part would have been included in the warranty of that unit. But now you don't have the time to go to the warranty process. So now if we can do some predictive maintenance and looking at that performance of that item before then, so pre-failure, you can order the part, change it out as is suggested within the specification, and not wait for the part to fail, saving you money and also making sure the building is always running as efficiently as possible, also saving money. With that, I would like to open up for Q&A. If Tom could come on and we can go through this Q&A process. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm leaving enough time for questions, so feel free to ask whatever you want.
Yeah, that was really great, Neil. Very insightful. Appreciated a lot of what you said there. I just want to remind everyone that we do have the opportunity to take questions. So they're off on the side there. There's a panel where you can type in questions, and then I'm going to try to get to all those questions. I would discourage you from putting questions in the chat section panel because I'm not looking there, and I'll probably miss them. But yeah, so I had a few questions. So one of the things that I've experienced is that owners don't have like standards that they use for their assets around data structure, and they're often kind of doing research and trying to figure out what the rest of the industry is doing or what the essential things are. In your experience, are there standards that are emerging that, if you run a different typologies of projects like a hospital versus an office building and whatnot, are there data standards that are emerging around asset management?
Yes, there are a few of them. And coincidentally, Kobe is kind of leading the charge on that. They were one of the first involved in those standards, and they're still trying to push those standards across. We utilized Kobe for both data centers as well as hospitals, which became really, really nice, leveraging that for our customers. However, going back to what I was saying before about having the end in mind, what information do you need to run your facility more efficiently? There are lots of fields within Kobe that you will never use during the life of the project. So what are the more important ones? Standardizing that process, and you can start just internally with your own buildings that you have, your own projects you're going on with, what needs to run forward.
So it's kind of a process to establish and customize your particular asset lists and data structure. But starting with Kobe is probably a good start, and then from there there's a process that you need to go through to kind of establish your particular data structure.
Yeah, refining becomes really important because then it becomes data that's not used later, and that just is a waste. So that becomes
like, if you have an existing asset, your capital projects team or your facilities management team, or is that something that you expect that a general contractor or construction manager will deliver as part of the digital delivery of the project, or are owners looking to third-party consultants or architects and engineers to figure this out for them?
It's all the above. So typically the first line of defense is getting the contractor and their subcontractors to put more data into the installations, especially with tools out there that allows you to scan the piece of equipment. It comes up on their phone or iPad. They can input the data as they install it, really easy, really quickly. But on top of that, I've seen a lot more third-party companies just come to life to help with this process, because there is a need to make sure that data is integral to the entire project lifecycle. So many more companies are doing that as a service.
So one of the questions that's been upvoted here in our system is, can you kind of review, I mean, you talked about Tandem, which obviously this new product that Autodesk is acquired and launching internationally. Are there other tools out there, facilities management systems? I guess like the big ones are like Archibus and Maximo. These are systems that have been around for a long time, but in your mind, Maybe you could rattle off a few of the different products out there that potentially use BIM and are kind of gaining some market share and traction around this sort of 2.0 thinking around asset management.
So what I've seen, and you mentioned the two big boys, Archibus and Maximo, they both have integrations to be able to install and input modeled data, but it's only a viewer of that modeled data. There's no other kind of aggregation of information as long as it exists separately. So for example, a work order ticket for a particular piece of equipment doesn't actually put that information into the equipment. It's just, a tag basically. So in terms of integrating that data into a rich digital twin, I haven't seen any of the tools besides what we're trying to push forward with Autodesk Tandem. Now, keeping that in mind, many times you as an owner may ask for a model because that's what you've heard, or maybe that's what you read, or whatever it needs to be. Just having the model is not enough. You need a tool that can actually pull and push the information into that model and throughout that process. So there's not many tools that can do it out there, but like you said, Maximo and Archibus are taking that next step in integrating 3D geometry into their process.
Yeah, right on. We did do, CanBIM did a virtual event, I think it was like 4 or 5 months ago, on digital twins. And so anyone who's kind of researching this subject, I would encourage you to go to our website and dig up those presentations. That they're still very applicable, and some really interesting products were featured there. So another question that came in was regarding, obviously when you're building a brand new building, it's a kind of a different problem. You have the opportunity to create scope and ask for particular things to be turned over at the end of the project, and that information can be structured in a certain way. But a lot of people that are tuning in today are managing, capital improvement projects on existing facilities, and these improvements tend to be small projects where you're reconfiguring some office space, or changing out a boiler room, or refacing the facade or lobby, or whatever the case is. So with these small projects, often there's not as much modeling and whatnot and data that emerges. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that, over the project lifecycle as the asset changes and you need to maintain that data set and keep it current. How do you manage that? What are the strategies? Who should do what?
Right. Fantastic. Good question. So what I've worked with personally is I've worked with a small owner that had just a couple of tenant finished spaces that really wanted to start leveraging this kind of digital twin idea and using more BIM, but did not have the cost or the capital to have someone come out and scan his project, or have someone come out and remodel it completely. So what we're able to do is we use rudimentary modeling. So we didn't get refined Revit or anything like that, just rudimentary modeling of parameter-rich cubes. So when there was a mechanical unit in the ceiling, we would put a box, and based on the specifications, just a rough square. And then we input the data inside of it. So then as they're building out more and more, and we started out with just the little occurrences that were happening, the little remodels, and started to it. But after 4 jobs, you started seeing how connected the entire system started becoming, because we started adding those little pieces back and forth. So you don't have to be photorealistic at the beginning, because again, we want to make sure we have the information and share it. And how do we do that most effectively? And so whether you have a simple model that you can see inside of Navisworks or the Freedom Viewer or whatever it may be, you can have the access to that information. So you can start small. It doesn't have to be a model. It can just be 2D, can just be drawings, as long as it's information rich.
Maybe you can talk, maybe elaborate a little bit on, if you have an existing facility, which, most of our built environment is already built, and these initiatives aren't in place. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the first steps. Is the first step to produce a LiDAR scan and convert that to a model and get that geometry data? Is the first step to kind of plan around what to work backwards from the data you need, or your facilities management workflow, and understanding those requirements and detailing those requirements? Like, what would you say the first few steps are to get started with an existing facility?
The first step is understanding what information you have and what information is missing. And once that is defined, then you can say, okay, to get the information that we're missing, we need to do a scan, we need to do a model, or to get the information we're missing, we need to kind of survey all the equipment and figure out all the data information attached to those pieces of equipment. That's the first step. What information do you have? What information do you need? And then from there, you can take the next step. Typically, what you'll find is that you have a lot of the information depending on how old your building is. You may have only the initial information when it was first handed over to you, and 10 years later, you have no other information. So gathering that new information to make sure you have it together, then you can start going to geometry and things like that.
Right. So if you have, if you've hired a general contractor and there's an expectation that they're providing digital project delivery where they're delivering all this asset data for your use long-term, how do you manage QAQC around the data? Like, how do you audit what you're receiving to make sure that it's accurate?
Right. So there is an audit trail that you have to do. So what we did is that we would do an Excel export of all the information, and that way we'd have all the different pieces of equipment inside Excel, and we can see any missing fields, and we can verify any of the fields as they were installed. Also, lots of times what you'll see is that you can easily take a picture of the item as it's being installed, and so you can start capturing some of the data there. So they can literally take a picture of the kind of serial number tag and all that kind of information, attach it to the piece of equipment, and then it's a quick check. Okay, that is the right serial number, back and forth. And so you can do a visual check like that. There's not much automation for these visual checks right now today, but that's something that I can see happening downstream easily. So that's the way we did it. We do an export of the data, and then we have a corresponding check on how you would do that based on installation or even walkthrough. Like going through the commissioning process, you can make sure the information is input in the correct way as part of the checklist too. So there's ways to verify as it's going.
So you mentioned like predictive maintenance, where you based on kind of I guess statistical analysis, you would know that a particular pump, if it runs at a certain pattern, will fail at 400,000 hours of use or whatever the case is, and then you can order that pump in advance and replace it. How far off are we from that? Is that something that's kind of built into Tandem? And is the data that's being collected from the building automation systems and whatnot being pushed into a cloud-based system where it can start to do that statistical analysis to be able to predict accurately? Or how will that work, and when will we actually see that?
So it's a little bit in the future, but the roads are already built. We just need to get the connective tissues to make it happen. So a lot of the control systems are already cloud-based or have an integration to a cloud API. Now, with how we're doing it with Tandem is that it's built on the Forge platform, which is Autodesk proprietary platform, and we're using Forge APIs to make that communication talk back and forth to each other from the controls to the model. So then it's a matter of then adding other requirements on top of the model, saying, okay, max usage of hours on this piece of equipment is 1,000 hours, for example. And then I want a warning at 800 hours. And then those things key up, you get emails sent out to the team, and that's going, yes, it's not here today, but that's where it is going. And the steps are already there. We just got to make that connection happen.
Yeah. So a question about Tandem and I guess the overall strategy of the platform. Is it going to be like an independent platform that plays nice with the Autodesk products, or is the intent to build like an ecosystem where it's going to connect into these other products that owners already have? And are there open APIs, and can you develop some customization for your particular needs?
Yes, there will be those things. Right now, we have our platform that exists from design through handover. It is built on top of that platform, but is also a separate entity. So an owner necessarily wouldn't have to get the entire platform. They could just get Tandem and then be able to get the information because it's linking back to that data. Right now, it is just kind of our platform. But again, we just announced it in November, and as it grows, we'll be having more expansive capabilities, open APIs, so we can connect to other ecosystems.
Are you aware of, I mean, one of the things with getting started with this, if you're going to put requirements on your project team to deliver the information you need, is there a standard or a document or a guide that owners can refer to that will help them develop the scope to make sure that as they hire the consultants and builders, that they develop the information, collect the information, and deliver it the way you want. Is there a standard around that? Is there a guideline somewhere that we could maybe point to?
I think the easiest one to point to, University of Penn State here in Pennsylvania created the first kind of BIM execution plan. And they standardized this probably, I would say, almost 20 years ago now. They were early on in their substantial execution plan. It talks about parameters and what you want involved in terms of what you're going to asset manage. They have some connection with the Kobe system and things like that, but that's readily available. You can download that for free. Again, it's the Penn State PENN State Building Execution Plan, Building Information Modeling Execution Plan, and that will give you a good starting point.
Awesome. Well, Neil, I think we better wrap up here. We got to get on to the next session, but thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed your presentation. Just a reminder, everybody, these sessions are recorded, so you can go back and share them with your peers if you think you want to check them out or watch them again to gather information. Really appreciate the time, Neil. Thanks so much, and thank you again to our platinum sponsors, SolidCAD and Great Tech. We're going to move on to the next session now. I'll meet you over there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks.